Here's a world map from the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Here's one from a KFC in India. A metro station in Istanbul. This is the board game map from Risk and Pandemic, and the big steel globe outside of Universal Studios. Have you noticed what they have in common? Look again, closely. Especially right around here. Something's missing. New Zealand. Now that's better. I found most of these off the subreddit Maps Without New Zealand, which I think is a very good representation of the Kiwi sense of humor. Don't take yourself too seriously. But the omission of New Zealand happens often enough for this to be a bit. In 2019, IKEA issued an apology for this decorative map that left off the country. Now, it's one thing when this happens at a watercolor map sold at IKEA, but here's a steel carving outside the headquarters of the United Nations. You'd think that of all places, the UN would have the motivation to get this right. And to be fair, the full vector version of their logo does have a more detailed globe. But still, this is at the entrance of a building that the New Zealand delegates walk through regularly. For good measure, here's another example from the Smithsonian. Normally the consequences of this are pretty minimal and everyone has a good chuckle. Then you have the woman from New Zealand who was detained in Kazakhstan in 2016. When customs officials asked her to point out her country on a map that was hung in their airport office, New Zealand was left off completely, giving her nothing to point at. Some of the most common reasons New Zealand gets left off are oversimplification and cropping. Sometimes when you're drawing a simple map, smaller islands next to larger land masses get left out. Happens to Madagascar and Sri Lanka too. Or they get pretty badly disfigured into clumps that look nothing like the actual land shapes, like Indonesia and the Philippines often deal with. But New Zealand is far enough east where it's also left out when people decide to crop their map right after Australia. But it's this remote and often overlooked setting that makes me want to go even more. And finally, I had my chance. Alright, after a pretty long couple days in the air around airports, we finally made it to Auckland. Here's our hotel room. Bathtub. Straight shot between the toilet. This is feng shui, right? Like when there's like a nice flow. First day in New Zealand, and one of the first things we're stopping at is the cemetery.
So our work here is done.
Yep, time to go.
The beginning of life, the end of life.
All of it in the same block. We did have what might be a top 5, top 3, top 1 breakfast of all time. Top 1 for you. It's definitely in my top 3 of hotel breakfasts. It's the only thing that's like on par with this place, or some of the hotel breakfasts I've had in the Philippines, because I love a good Filipino breakfast. But they had stations of everything. If you like a Ron Swanson bacon and eggs type of breakfast, if you would rather have oats, if you'd rather have fruits and yogurt, they've got that. And like waffles and pancakes and French pastries. They had a section if you're like Asian and you're like, my breakfast is what I eat at 8 other parts of the day just in the morning. Yeah, the restaurant is called 8, or here at 8, but because they represent 8 different international cuisines. I'm not sure if that applies equally to breakfast or if that's like their dinner menu, but
Probably. It was a big long hug.
I'm sure this spot looks familiar. It's Hobbiton, the actual movie set for Lord of the Rings that still continues to attract loads of visitors to New Zealand every day. First things first, breakfast at the Shire, because how can you not? You're actually supposed to have 2. And then on to some more familiar sights. Alright, we're doing a little walk around of the Hobbiton film set here. Hobbiton is about as touristy of a spot as you'll find in New Zealand, which is a pretty chill country overall. There's a good bit of lore around the selection of this place. Peter Jackson and his location scout David Comer found that the rolling hills matched Tolkien's description of the Shire. They even had a towering pine tree that worked really well as the party tree. But most importantly, there weren't a lot of visible telephone poles or modern roads to ruin the setting. This space was a sheep farm, and every account of the initial outreach to the family that ran it makes it clear. They were reluctant, and perhaps even a bit grumpy. The farm's owner even made them come back after the rugby match they were watching finished. They did not want to be disturbed. But eventually, they were won over. And that's pretty good for them. They reap the rewards of these set tours as a 50-50 business partnership. Most of the Hobbit homes here are a facade. They don't have much of an interior, and most are built deliberately small so that the non-Hobbit actors could be filmed to look large by comparison. As these tours have gotten more popular, though, they've added some interiors to make it a more immersive tour. Get a sense for how hobbits lived every aspect of their lives. Before parting, we spent some time at the Green Dragon Tavern, which was also recreated to fine detail. They even got their own proprietary ales and ginger beers. Between the stout or the amber ale, which
do you like dark beer?
Let's do the stout then.
So you want to try the stout and the ginger beer, yeah?
Yep. Yours is bitter.
Yours is ginger, I like it.
I really.
Their beers were really good. The one problem is that you don't want to develop too much of a taste for these because there's nowhere else to get them. If you ask me about my favorite thing that I got to do in New Zealand, I think I have a pretty clear winner. About an hour away from the Hobbiton set, you'll find the glowworm caves of Waitomo. This place was truly incredible. We started by touring the caves, and I don't have a whole lot of footage of this tour because the little bit I did record looks something like this. Yeah, we were in near darkness using the most minimal light possible, so that's what you get. The cave featured an underground stream, which we were able to navigate by boat. Then, as we went deeper, we found the parts of the cave where blue glowing larva worms were hanging from the cave ceiling. The glowing blue dots kind of looked like an otherworldly starry sky. And it's funny, because as pretty as this scene was, these creatures are a lot less charismatic up close, at least in my opinion. These glowworms are not actually worms, but the larvae of a fungus gnat species. Yeah, if my proper name were fungus gnat, I too would pick an alias like glowworm. They hang from the cave ceiling using sticky mucus. Once again, what a charmer. And these silk threads become something like spider webs that trap smaller flying insects. Their digestive tracts have an enzyme that creates the chemical reaction behind their blue glow. Oh, and that enzyme? It's called luciferase. Right, like Satan plus the ending for an enzyme. Like everything about naming this bug was either done by the romantic who came up with glowworms or an insult comic who came up with sticky mucus fungus gnat. The other reason I took minimal footage is because most of these caves are Maori sacred sites. There was one section I did get a green light to shoot, and it looked something like this. Truly one of the most breathtaking natural experiences I've enjoyed.
Doing that, they will kill the sheep and to protect the sheep farmers in South
Of course, you're not going to get very far around here without seeing quite a bit of this. Fields full of sheep going by through the window. And you've probably already heard the classic bit, New Zealand, the country with more sheep than people. What you don't hear quite as often is how this is rapidly changing. In the 1980s, that sheep-to-people ratio was roughly 22-1. Now, you're looking at 4.5 sheep for every person. That's a big drop-off. But to put it into perspective, sheep have only been around New Zealand for about 250 years, brought over by British traders and missionaries. The wool exporting business boomed in the late 1800s. It was then where it became one of the most lucrative industries around New Zealand. Unfortunately, the environmental consequences of sheep herding were pretty severe. The demand for grassy pastures led to the clearing of over half of New Zealand's forests. That in turn contributed to the extinction of a lot of different species. By the 1950s, the trade had solidified itself as part of New Zealand's identity. Sheep shearing became a national competition.
These Cheviot Romney crosses are carrying up to 10 pounds of wool per fleece. In the first hour, the 32-year-old aspirant put through 51 sheep, an average of one caught and shorn every 70 3/5 seconds.
Then in the 1980s, New Zealand reached peak sheep, with that 22-1 ratio. That comes out to about 70 million sheep. But now, the trade has been in decline. There's several factors behind this. First, climate change has brought drought, which has forced a lot of farmers to reduce the size of their flocks. Wool no longer holds the value that it used to. Many farmers have found that it actually costs more to shear the sheep than they can bring in from selling their wool. Even more profitable, and crucial to New Zealand's environmental goals, is the reforestation of the country. Carbon credits have incentivized farmers to turn their pastures back into forests, creating carbon sinks and expanding biodiversity. All right, our second hotel in Auckland. This is one of the most unique room layouts I've ever seen. You walk in here, and the centerpiece of this entire place is the bathtub. And then separated by a half wall is the bed. And the mini bar over there. Bartender!
I have a cooler pack.
And I've noticed that they're very big on the welcome macarons. I like that there's a working desk right next to the bathtub. Imagine doing like your conference call from right here. Maybe you've seen this ad before.
If these lands could speak, what would they say? They would say, welcome.
This is a marketing campaign for tourism in New Zealand that ran several years ago. 100% pure New Zealand, highlighting the epic natural landscapes of the country. On one hand, they're not wrong. This country is gorgeous. But on the other hand, well, they are wrong. Things here are not 100% pure. In fact, despite its scenic beauty, New Zealand is also a bit of an environmental horror story. See, with New Zealand's isolation, it should be a hub of biodiversity and evolutionary oddities. At one point, it really was. New Zealand has almost no terrestrial apex predators native to the island, and because of that, many of its indigenous species have never had to develop the adaptations needed to escape their hunters. That's why so many of their iconic birds are flightless ones. When European settlers began to arrive, so did rats and cats. They came along for the ride, often as stowaways on their ships, and they arrived as new predators. The European settlers also brought along rabbits to continue their sport of hunting, and this became a big mistake. The rabbits multiplied quickly, as they do, and with nothing to hunt them, farms were quickly destroyed. People then tried bringing in stoats, weasels, or ferrets to try and hunt down and eat those rabbits. But then, those predators developed a taste for New Zealand's flightless birds. Within a century, the country saw large amounts of forest loss and extinction. There are current conservation efforts that are aiming to reverse these issues. But yeah, it was a pretty big disaster. It still feels like a paradox, though, because New Zealand remains undeniably gorgeous. It's cool being in a spot that's like super green, but not just green, but just like with so many different types of things. This is what a 20-minute hike to Kite Kite Falls gets you. Oh man, okay, this waterfall and the pool right below it make for such a great swimming hole. Of course, it is New Zealand's winter right now. Any other time of the year, I would just be in this water. But I couldn't come all this way without at least getting my feet in. It is ice water. Oh. Hiking nature walks I've done. What is traditional Maori food like, and can I have some? Okay, I'm in Auckland. I'm on my way to the hangi shop. About to try hangi for the first time. Hangi is a traditional Maori cuisine, steamed food mostly in pit ovens. Hangi is prepared by creating a natural underground oven. You want to dig a pit into the ground, heat up stones, usually volcanic rocks, and prepare meat, root veggies, and cabbage. Put them in baskets or wrap them in leaves, and let them steam underground for 3 to 4 hours, maybe even more. In modern Maori life, hangi is typically reserved for special occasions and big gatherings, but the hangi shop in Auckland is one place that caters and also allows you to try it in a more casual setting. Tonight's dinner is going to consist of the cabbage, some of the veggies. I wish I knew what this was. It was a root of some sort, pumpkin, potatoes, side salad, and some chicken. The food was very lightly seasoned, so the flavors were subtle, but as you would expect from food that's been steaming for multiple hours, it was really quite tender. I think it's cornmeal. Tastes a lot like turkey stuffing. I also came here late at night, so I don't know if this was the hangi shop at its finest, but I did have their signature dessert, steamed pudding. Oh, it is good. This also kind of reminds me of like a holiday dinner. Shout out to the hangi shop. From where I come from, Maori cuisine isn't exactly the easiest to find, so I'm glad I got to have this experience. Alright, we made it to Piha Beach after a bit of a drive. Gotta do my opposite side driving fix. And yeah, went better than the last time I did it. Driving through New Zealand's a lot easier than central Johannesburg.
I'm tired.
She navigated.
I'm tired from keeping us alive. It was a lot of work.
And there's some cool big rocks. So, we're gonna go walk around and check it out. But check out that bird right there. He's on our car. What's going on, bird? Our time in Auckland is just about done. We wanted to keep things close for the final day, so we hopped on board the ferry to ride across to Devonport. Devonport is a small island with a little community. It has a sleek library, rows of shops and restaurants, and a great waterfront walk to the end. My favorite highlight on Devonport had to be the vintage bookshops, treasure troves of old prints. Not gonna lie, this week kind of went by fast. No, the whole time I've been here, I've been reminding myself the treat isn't just being in New Zealand and trying to do everything I can, but the other treat is just having a little break from the busyness back home. And so if some days are more chill and relaxed, probably needed that. I have no idea when another opportunity will come up. You know, obviously we made kind of a big to-do about this being 10 years and all, so hopefully the next time isn't too far away, but we'll find out. For now, this was great. Auckland. What a treat. Some spectacular nature, food that deserves more praise, and the uncommon mix of being a hub of adventure and one of the coziest corners of the world. I do hope to be back, and even more adventures lay ahead in Christchurch. Here's when you know you're in a cozy place, when the airport ticker is telling you to relax. I think I'm gonna do just that, at least until the next big adventure calls.